here, and we'll get started from there. So real quick, we have Coach, pronounce your last name again so I'm not screw it up.
Calcagno.
Coach Calcagno from Oklahoma State, as a guest today with the three other strength coaches in the Coaches Collective. Justin Schwind here. I'm the Human Performance Advisor for the 58 Sal. Darius Ducre is the Strength and Conditioning Coach for the 58 Sal. And we're out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then we'll have Joseph Boyd, which will join us here in the next 5 minutes or so. He is the strength and conditioning coach for the 528 Sustainment Brigade with USASOC. So we got Air Force and we got Army within Special Operations Command represented today. Realistically, what we're looking at is picking your brains as a strength coach. We all know that specifically you work with specific athletes, but at the same time, in strength and conditioning in the performance setting, it goes into any setting. It's really about movement patterns and limitations and deficiencies and what are the ideal in-game performance standards we're looking for. So we were definitely reaching across the board for all these different coaches to kind of jump in. But other than that, Coach, if you can share you in about 2.5 minutes, then we'll get started.
Awesome.
You're up, Coach.
So I'm Gary Calcagno at Oklahoma State University, and kind of a little background on my career. My parents were professors at NEO A&M Junior College. My mom actually coached as well, and they were good friends with a faculty couple, and the husband was a business teacher and a football coach for NEO, and he went on to be at the University of Tulsa. So when I'd kind of decided that I liked strength conditioning and lifting with my high school coach, he really was the one that got me hooked in the weight room. I kind of told people that was going to be the direction I was going to go, and the coach's name's Mac Butler. He had gone to the University of Tulsa, and he'd been there for really just a season, and it was in December of '89. And he said, "Hey, we have a GA job that's open. Would you come interview for it, or would you like to?" So I went down 2 days later, interviewed for it, and I'd gone to NEO as, because my mom and dad taught there, so I just was a student there. So I went to the University of Tulsa and started there in January of '90 as a student assistant. We had one strength coach who was the head strength coach, Colby Schreckengast. And so then shortly after that, Tom Cross came and volunteered because Coach Cross had basically retired from coaching in high school. And so I got to be around Coach Cross and his knowledge of Olympic lifting, which helped me immensely at a young age. So then I got my undergraduate working in the weight room at the University of Tulsa, and then I stayed on and got my master's degree in gifted education, working in the weight room. And then by that time, Coach Cross was the head strength coach. So then our athletic director had gone to Washington State University, Rick Dixon. So I got hired at Washington State University. That was my first full-time job. I was there from 94 through 99. And then I got an internship with the Dallas Cowboys with Coach Jurazic. And so I go to Dallas, and it coincided with my father having cancer. So it also enabled me to be closer to Oklahoma. The tight ends coach at the time was a guy named Les Miles, and he came to me during training camp and said, "There's an assistant's job open at Oklahoma State, and would you be interested?" And I said, I would. He put a call in. I interviewed like 2 days later, 3 days later, got the job, and I've been here ever since. And then when he came in as the head strength coach, that's when I got elevated, and then did not get to go to LSU with Coach Miles. Obviously, no one's going to replace Tommy Moffitt. He's fantastic. I never thought I was going to get to go. Let me just put that out there either. But Coach Gundy was gracious enough to keep me, thankfully, and had told me, he sat me down, brought me in, said, you did a good job, but I can hire Rob Glass from Florida, and it'll just make us all better. And he brought Coach Glass in, and that's the way it is to this day. So I've gotten blessed and lucky to work with, some guys that are truly legends in the field. So.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it. Kind of first question for the day when I ask you, this is kind of dealing with current times and what's going on. How is it different now compared to 6 weeks or 7 weeks ago? And how are you in that two-part question? How are you adjusting? What are you doing to continuously shoulder tap or reach your athletes, which you got to see them every day before? So what are you doing differently or innovatively do you see doing to really have that engagement piece?
I assist with football, and I'm in charge of wrestling. So wrestling, right now we would have, 6 weeks ago, we actually missed nationals. I would have given the guys off the next week that qualified, and everybody else would have started a postseason. They were probably – everybody at that point would have been on a 4-day just because we needed to get bigger and a bunch of guys were cutting weight all season. So then it was, everything turns upside down. Now I haven't written up a body weight workout. Probably it's been years. And so I liked it because I got to kind of really do some research and try to figure out some wrestling specific stuff to do with their conditioning and their body weight workouts. Coach Glass did that over on the football side with all those workouts. And then he put us in charge of 2 different positions. I have the receivers and the quarterbacks, so we check in on them, see, do you have access to a field? Do you have access to a gym? Are you getting the workouts? Okay, that type of deal. Wrestlers, the team has 2 Zoom calls a week, and Coach Smith lets me weigh in quickly before the academic guy goes just to make sure anybody has any questions. Well, it's funny. A lot of the guys were like, we don't like this body weight stuff. They actually either built or went and bought weight equipment, bars and weights. And our 184-pounder, Anthony Montalvo, has a full-on gym behind, out in their little patio, and a bunch of the guys go over there and lift. So I just emailed them my 4-day, and they're doing the full workout there. So I liked been able to do some body weight stuff, but as being a strength conditioning coach, that's not our deal. It's putting weight in your hands. So it was fun. Now I'm ready to go back to work.
Gotcha. Coach Ducre, you got any questions?
Yes, sir. I was curious in regards to the methods that you use for recovering your athletes, especially those who have issues with maintaining lean muscle mass.
That's a tough one with wrestling, as you know. Thankfully, Coach Smith is the best in the world at cutting weight, obviously. So he does a really good job of making sure the guys do it correctly. And Coach Smith does an excellent job of if a guy, let's say a guy wrestled at 149 last year, he's not going to let him go down and wrestle at 133 this coming year because it's too big of a jump. So if the guy's having trouble, he just lets them go to the weight above or stay at the weight they're at. So that eliminates a lot of that. You don't see a lot of the Oklahoma State guys having the big weight cuts that some other people do, basically because of that. He wants everybody to be healthy and do it the right way. And then our trainer, our ATC, Chris Hindeleiter, does an unbelievable job with maintaining their certification and their body fat. And I work with him closely with that to where if anybody is in any issues, we bring them in and talk to them. And usually Coach Smith's on the front side of that to begin with. So I think we stay away from that based on the fact that there's not a huge weight cut for our guys.
Coach Boyd, you got anything to ask?
Yeah, I'll actually add to that. So going on, continuing with the theme of recovery, wrestling is not a sport that I've ever in my career at the college level ever got a chance to work with. But now working with tactical athletes, the mentality of our guys, and I'm going to try to compare it to wrestlers. I don't know if I can, but
very similar.
The mentality of our guys, the go, kind of more is better type deal. I'm assuming you get that more with your young guys coming in at the beginning. What's your strategies on getting younger athletes or those younger wrestlers to buy into recovery techniques, and kind of educating them on more is not necessarily better, and putting a premium on recovery rather than just kind of throwing it out there saying, hey, here's what you need to be doing, but then letting it kind of fall to the wayside?
Right. Well, and I'll answer this in two parts. My boss, Coach Glass, does an unbelievable job of the recovery aspects in football. We have Catapult, we have Rise Sleep app, we have the Sparta Force Plates, and he does an unbelievable job with our nutritionist and our Gatorade stuff that we do on the road and at home, night before games, and just really all week. So Coach Gundy has really bought into that piece. Coach Gundy early on as a head coach was a little bit like his coach, Pat Jones, and it was, full pads all the time, long practices. And then he was the OC, assistant head coach for Les Miles. So Coach Miles was long practice guy too, full pads. They've worked together to where they've kind of morphed that into we're way scaled down now because of the soft tissue issue. Coach Smith, not so much, just because I think that – have you been watching Last Dance, the deal with Michael Jordan?
Yes, I have.
Okay, that's John Smith. He is a stone cold killer, and you're not the America's greatest wrestler, 6 world championships / gold medals in a row. Whenever every episode, I'm like, this is John Smith, because that's his mentality. Coach Smith is one of a kind. And so when they get here, I try to do what I can do in the weight room with, a really good warm-up, movement prep, hip mobility stuff in the beginning. Then when we get done with the workout, they do a cool down, stretch strap, or foam roller, little session before I send them on their way. Our trainer's down here for every lift. Like I said a minute ago, he does an excellent job. So I do what I can do and I just keep pushing it into their head. But you said it. It's a twofold deal. One is Coach Smith, and two, it's that sport. I don't know that they ever really buy in until, and I hate to say this, until they get a tweak or something happens. And then they're like, oh, now I see what you're saying. So I don't know if that answers it. I don't know that I really, just like our ATC asked me a while back, he said, well, what do you think Coach Smith would think about, if you went to him with a heart rate deal or Catapult? And I just laughed. Like, that is never going to happen. And he said, that's kind of what I thought too. I wanted to get your take on it. But Coach has been better with shortening stuff up, but that's just who he is, and he's had success. So you can't say anything against that.
Right. Do you? I know you mentioned like the force plates and everything, the Sparta force plates with Coach Glass. Do you utilize those with your wrestlers, or is that just primarily football?
Nope, I use it with the wrestlers, and it's funny. The first time I took him the paperwork, he did this number, that deal, and just put it down. But it's good for me and our ATC to look at and say, okay, Preston Weigel has XYZ. Maybe we need to do a little extra posterior chain for him, or whatever it may be, when they're out of whack, as with the force plate stuff. So our trainer really likes it and dives into it. So we have a great relationship. And so, when we sit down at the beginning of the year and do it and get the feedback, then I'll add the extra stuff to the guys' workouts.
Do you guys predominantly use that as a readiness piece or a injury prevention, or kind of twofold, both?
Really injury prevention.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I know that Hootie kind of used it as a readiness piece at KU. Really both, but I think she did it and does it pretty often. I don't do it near as often as they do it there. They had that great setup where at KU, I don't know how she does it in Texas now, but at KU before, so you could roll the guys through. When we bring it out, we leave it set up in football, and we bring it out here and use it.
Gotcha.
So we do it both ways.
I gotcha. Does the how often would you say that you use it, and is that kind of a regular part of like your periodic testing? Is that kind of how you use it?
No, I use it twice a year because I feel like, hopefully that'll show that some changes have been made in their body, or if I'm doing my program correctly. But, between you and I, Coach Smith really doesn't buy into I asked him one time about testing the guys, and he goes, the only thing I care about is getting that hand raised. Understand me? And I was like, yeah. He wasn't worried about
right
as or squat, so I just use it for myself.
I got you. No, thank you, Coach. I appreciate that. I don't want to hog everything, but thank you.
What you said, it was funny. I was looking at these questions, and I was thinking last night about if there was anything that's close to what you guys do sport-wise, it's the wrestlers. Very similar.
Coach, real quick question for you. What motivates you? Obviously, you've been in this. You're a master strength coach. You've been in this field for a good while, and you're very much seasoned in this field. So, from obviously any of us, when we first come in this field, we're full of piss and vinegar, and really, it's just coaching motivates us, just to be in front of the guys, and I guess that atypically might still motivate you, but there's other things that you have to adapt to as you get older. You can't do all the things that you used to as a coach too, probably. So what motivates you now, and what motivates you back then, and what has changed in motivating you? And then second part to that question, you oversee a certain amount of assistants. You also have interns you work with. How do you motivate them more than a scare tactic? You don't do this, you're gone type. But how do you motivate them? How do you encourage them? And because motivating can be internal and external, or intrinsic and extrinsic. So I guess if you can expound upon that a little bit.
Yep. Good questions. I think what motivated me early was, this is going to sound terrible, but was just flat out winning. I wanted to win rings and championships, and I loved winning. I don't know if it was because I threw a pick in the state championship game of football and we lost, so I lost the state title for us. But I was like win, and which was good in a way because I felt like I wasn't going to be outworked by anybody, so I never minded, being in the weight room and working. But now, being a little bit older, I feel like what motivates me is seeing a kid come in that maybe hasn't bought into the weight room but has unbelievable technique, and seeing them realize what the weight room can do for them and them getting better and having success because of it. Also, to kind of piggyback on that, is seeing a kid that maybe I didn't think was the best kid as far as doing everything right, to where bringing them in and talking to them and setting them down and really having a relationship with them, and them changing. I felt like I probably didn't do that enough when I was younger, but now that's what motivates me, is really more of having a relationship with our guys. Now, I still do the what my mom told me years ago to start when I started coaching. It was start them out here and you can let them in, but if you start them in here, you can never push them out. So I don't get too close too quick, but I definitely have a lot more one-on-one meetings with the guys, just to check on them and see how they're doing. And I probably don't yell near as much either. So are we frozen on our set here?
Good over here.
I'm
okay.
good.
And then the next thing is with overseeing, like I normally will have an intern with me that helps me with wrestling. I think early on was exactly what he was saying about, this is what I want you to do, and if you don't do it, we'll find somebody else. Now it's, hey, here's what I expect. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to make up a workout for me so I can go over it, and I want you to be able to learn. Sometimes I just let them run the warm-up, movement prep, and the hurdle mobility to where they control the team, because I see it as a way of, if you're going to work for me and I'm going to be on your resume as a reference and they're going to call me because you work wrestling with me, then I'm going to be able to stamp you. So I'm going to figure out ways to say, hey, this guy, I'm going to do an infomercial for this young man because he did an incredible job as an intern for me. So that's changed for me now. I see it more as my responsibility as an older strength coach. I hate to say the word older, but the guy that's been in the business, to get our interns ready to actually get hired. So,
we got a question for you, Coach. I'll steer on the more mature coach and not the old coach.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
No problem, sir. So you spoke a good deal on player or athlete buy-in. What has changed over the course of your career with getting coach buy-in? And I ask that because, I'm from the collegiate sector, like Coach Boyd is as well. So dealing with the different commanders, in my experience, has been similar to those coaches, and they have their ways, especially being on the tactical side. It's growing and it's still new for different branches, So I was just curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Coach Smith was one of those guys that he had pulled his wrestlers out of the weight room. There was basically a football guy, and he thought it was too football specific, and he just did it. He just took them out and did it. Well, then when they were going to get put back in, that's when I got him. So he kept me like this for the first year, as you can imagine. And he wasn't real thrilled about all the Olympic movements, I could tell, but I just kept talking about trunk strength and triple extension and the hip pop and what's, coach, everybody's trying to be you or guys like you. Well, the one thing the great ones have in common is hip power. Okay, this is how we create hip power. So then it was just the constant talking to him, and he would come down to the weight room and see guys, and he would see guys move weight, and then thankfully some of those same guys were having success on the mat. because of what we were doing is just really, I think, the right stuff to do. So he was definitely one of the ones you were talking about, because he just kind of going back to the Jordan deal. I had heard when he'd won the gold medal in '92. He takes over the program in '94. They win the national team title that year. He was real, like, I can't believe you can't do that. How do you not know, what's getting ready to come right there? Well, he saw it from his perspective being the best. Not everybody can do that. So then one time I was talking to him, I said, Coach, that you can do things that nobody can do. So then I've got to do this stuff to where we can kind of bridge the gap on those people that don't have your genetic gene pool. I mean, it's just not going to work that way. So it took him a while to buy in. And I think part of that was what he had been through as his training himself. And then the strength coaches that he'd had working with his team. That's why he just did it. So it took me a good while to do that. That's a good question. He still makes me nervous.
And if I could piggyback, what is your differences in, let's say, brand new, fresh to the weight room freshmen as compared to your vets, your juniors and seniors, in your programming and philosophy and style, sir?
Yeah, which will be interesting, there'll be none of that this year. We used to always bring our freshmen in and do what's called a bridge course. You bring them in, kind of get their feet wet. They meet with their advisors. They do online stuff. They work out with me, and they kind of get their feet wet into the college experience. Well, when they come down the weight room, I teach them the movement prep. I teach them the hurdle workout. I teach them the ab workout. I teach them the manual neck and all that type of stuff. And then I just really start with the top down method with the Olympic lifting. I just act like none of them know until a guy says, which I've had this a bunch, I'm sure you had, Coach, I've done this or whatever. Sometimes I'm like, okay, well, let me see you do it. Sometimes I'm like, well, just bear with me for a minute. And then if they really can snap the bar doing a high pull or rack clean or something, then I may let them go a little bit quicker. But I take those guys and we spend about 20, 30 minutes on just platform technique. And then I'll pick different workouts or different exercises that day to where by the end of the summer, they know every exercise on our 3-day and or 4-day to when school starts in August, they're ready to go. Now, being ready to go doesn't mean they'll be in there with, like you said, a junior or senior, but I can have them in their own group and they know their technique's going to be good and they're going to be proficient to where I'm not stressed out and I can still, be with the older guys and I know that they're handling the weight that I have on the lift for them. So it's really two different lifts, but it's not, but by virtue of the bridge class in the summer, they can kind of get caught up quicker. I think we lost him.
Schwind, we lose you?
Oh, there I'm here, buddy. I was going to let you go, Boyd.
Okay, cool. Coach, talking more, I guess, nuts and bolts pieces to your training. You said it, and we both talked about it earlier, wrestlers, tactical athletes, very similar. One thing that I see from our guys having a big need is just a huge, rotational component to our training. And since there's a lot of similarities between the people that I coach and the people that you coach, can you kind of outline how you attack that in your training program, just the rotational component that wrestlers need and how you go about that?
It's funny you said that. I was just talking about the flexibility piece with a guy a couple days ago as well. we're sticklers on technique about everything we do with the movement prep, hurdle mobility, every exercise. I'm really, no matter what, the technique's going to be first and foremost instead of the weight on the bar or how they're doing a movement prep. So I think that's number one. Number two is all of our trunk work that we do. A lot of people call it core. I just like to call it trunk work. So all of our, med ball work, 3-touch toss. I train the ab area, our core area, just like a muscle group. So we start off by doing no weight. Then they start by going with a 25-pound plate or then a 45-pound plate. Same thing with all of our med ball stuff, to where all of our twists and our throws with the med balls are going to be done perfectly, but they start out much, much lighter. Plus, I think when you do the Olympic movements and you do them correctly, and that's most of your day, you're going to get a lot of that trunk work, core work that most people think it needs to be a section at the very end. And
right.
As you know, we pull so much that we're going to do a lot more trunk work than most people. One thing that we have this ab workout that I stole from Coach Glass, obviously, is 25, 50, 10. They do 25 toe touches. They sit up. They do 50 twists with 25-pound plate. And then they do 10 V-ups. So that's one of the first things we start. They start off doing a no weight. Then they go to a 10-pound plate. The football guys know. Wrestlers do. And then they go to a 25. And at the end of a training cycle, they may have a 45. So that will blow you up in your trunk area. And then we have a poured concrete wall that we do a bunch of rotational throws on outside of the weight room out on the track. So.
Gotcha. No, that's good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Coach, real quick, I wanted to ask you a question. How would you describe your style of coaching? We talked about what motivates you. Now, how do you describe your style of coaching? Has it changed over the years, or is it pretty much spot on? And I'll real quick before I open it up for you. I know mine is much more different, and I approach things differently. When I first started, I was freaking yell, 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 not negatively breaking anybody down, but scream, 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 try to jump around. I still have a little bit of that, but more so now I take back a little bit more and try to analyze the situation. And I look at who I coach, and I coach everybody differently because they respond. So obviously still want the same atmosphere, but I don't just jump right in like I just jumped in a pot of hot water. So I kind of open that up to you to see if that's changed.
That's very good, because that almost was me to a T. Everybody, I think if you grabbed any football player or wrestler from the last 20 years that's come through Oklahoma State, they would be like, man, coach, he'll get on you, he'll yell at you, whatever. Now I don't want to have to. I feel like I want to make it a great training environment, and this is what I expect. And I think part of the deal with really watching Coach Glass, the guys almost have I don't want to let Coach Glass down type thing. So he expects this, and I'm going to be as close to that as I can be because of his reputation. And maybe that I'm kind of trying to get as close to that as I can. So now I've laughed that much of the older guys are like, man, you're mellow now. Well, no, I'm really kind of doing what you talked about. I don't want to have to just yell to be yelling, and I want them to bring and raise their game up. And so now if I yell, there's a legitimate reason why I'm doing it. If I catch a guy skipping reps or something like that, or hey, stay back on your heels on your squat, and then the next rep they, are on their midfoot, then I start saying, hey, I just told you that. So whereas years ago I'd have been like, oh, and I'm not near that way anymore. So because I think I have gotten to the point now where maybe it's being married now, or I wasn't before, but it's not everybody responds to that well. And before I didn't care, but it just, and then they would see later after being around me for years that, no, he does care about me, but I try to foster that early on to where if a kid's not doing the right thing now, I may bring him in and sit them down and say, hey, look, this is what I expect. You're not living up to that. Either it changes or we're going to go to the next level. So thankfully, the wrestlers are enough self-motivated. We don't really have to do that. And over in football, it's the guys are just really the respect level for Coach Glass is the way it is. And Coach Gundy talks about it all the time. We hardly ever have any issues over there. So I've done the same thing that you did. Now I really assess the situation more than I jump in there and like you said, scald somebody with the hot water.
I got it. Next question I want to ask you, Coach. So you've been in the collegiate setting besides your little stint with the Dallas Cowboys your whole career. We just talked about before we got on this podcast how you're hitting your 20th year at Oklahoma State, and at some point you might go into a different sector. If you jumped into our area of expertise, I don't know what your knowledge base is in the tactical setting, but the little that you do know, if you do know any, is there anything that you would bring over to this setting working with the soldier that you feel, just from your outside in perspective, you feel would be essential or crucial? One, for buy-in; two, for the betterment of the soldier, optimal performance of the soldier.
I think, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in the tactical area, but the one thing that I think correlates to both wrestling and what you guys do is being able to control your own body weight. And I run the strength conditioning section of Coach Smith's intensive camp. So each night I have them in the weight room. Well, I've even kind of switched. I kind of wanted them to get their money's worth and to lift a little bit. Well, now I make sure they can do a prisoner squat correctly. They can do a pull-up. They can do a push-up. They can do a dip. And they can do a push-up tee. They can do a hip bridge, all that type of stuff to where, and especially with wrestling, as you know, you're going to wrestle a guy your body weight. So if you can't handle your own body weight, then you're not going to be able to handle another man. So I've really pushed in the last probably 10 years more so on, hey, do your body weight lifts perfectly, and then you can progress to having a bar in your or a dumbbell in your hand. But that's the number one thing that I would think would transfer to the tactical side is, you're going to have to be able to handle your own body weight. And if you, as Coach Glass always says, lock horns with another man, you better have great conditioning, one, and you better be able to control your own body, because that's really the basis of everything.
Thanks, Coach. Guys, you got anything else?
Yeah, Coach, I want to ask, in terms of, up-and-coming young coaches, what's some advice that you can provide to them in terms of developing, their coaching style, their coaching philosophy?
I think, in my opinion, and that's changed too over the years, I would have said the way to progress in the field is, really having a relationship with the football coaches or your coaches to where they're going to, if they have somebody that calls them and says, hey, my buddy's at NC State, he's got an opening, would you be interested? To where now I see it as you better have your stuff dialed in so good that when that opportunity comes, however it may come from Coach Glass or myself or Jake, our basketball strength coach, I don't want to send them out not ready, not knowing how to use Excel, not knowing how to set a program up. And then my thing is, be yourself and find out, your coaching style. So that's why I let them take the group to where they're not nervous in front of a group, or they have to speak a couple times. Coach Smith teaches a class, like theory of coaching, and a couple of my interns have done the strength conditioning section on that, just to where they can stand up and speak in front of people, to where you're able to know what you can do and what your positives and negatives are. And then a lot of times I'll bring them in afterwards and say, okay, hey, this is what I think you can do better. You did a great job doing this. You handled the correction on Nick pitching innies, power clean perfectly, to where, I'm trying to give them constant feedback on, that was a great job. This is what you need to work on, but also allowing them to kind of find their own way with that as well. And then going to conventions and networking is really important. But as you know, with being older in this profession, you get most jobs based on this. Somebody's going to say, hey, I've got a spot. Do you know anybody? Or, hey, a buddy of mine's got a spot. He doesn't have anybody in mind. Do you have anybody in mind? So if you don't feel good about recommending somebody that's right underneath you, then you're just going to say, no, I really don't have anybody. But that's why I want all of our interns that I work with to say, hey, I can stamp you immediately, to where, and when that call comes in, you're ready to go. So.
Thanks, Coach. We're kind of wrapping up on our time. Joe, do you got anything else to ask him, and then we'll kind of open up the Coach?
Yeah, the only thing that I had left, and I just wanted to ask Coach, with you being in as long as you have, and just being able to share some of your wisdom on this. There's, in the past few years, there's just been a lot of talk in the profession about how do we further legitimize ourselves as a profession. There's the whole thing back and forth with the 2 certifications out there, and everything like that. Really just wanted kind of your opinion on, number one, where you think the profession is, where do you think it's headed, and what do we have to do? Because I really think that all of us, we're all in this together, right? We've I'm in my 12th year now. Obviously you've been in for a very long time. Coach Ducre, Coach Schwind has as well. So we obviously love this profession, and we're all proponents of it. Just really wanted your thoughts on, what is, as a community, we need to do to help this thing rise up and become even more than it is right now. That was really my last question for you.
Okay. I think being as professional as you possibly can in your work on the floor, when you're out at practice, game day. This is just my opinion. I don't think at any time sitting on the bench, now I'll get excited when a guy gets a pin or a big takedown in sudden victory, or we score the winning touchdown, whatever it may be, and I'll fist bump or whatever, but I'm not going to wave a towel, because Coach Gunny does not like it. Coach Glass does not like it. That's just not who we are here at Oklahoma State. But even if it was that way, I don't see myself doing it, because I don't think any kid is ever going to look over and, maybe it was James Washington, who plays for the Steelers now, was, one of the guys that I always trained. But James Washington never looked to the sideline and said, man, look at Coach G over there getting hyped. I've got to get this first down catch. Or Alex Derringer, in looking over at the bench at me going, man, look at Coach G over there so hyped. I'm going to get a takedown for him. They're not doing that. They're trying to listen to their coaches, and they're trying to rely on their coaching and what they're doing. They're not worried about what the strength conditioning coach is doing. So my job the hay should be in the barn on game day or match day for me. That should be it. But that lends to the professionalism piece. I think I have both certifications. Our athletic director is a lot like most athletic directors. He was like, I'm not going to pay for both. Well, I didn't let my CSCS lapse. You know, Coach Glass is on our board of directors for the CSCCA. I'm a master strength coach. I have all that, but I never let my other one lapse either, because they're the two that are accredited. And I think that you should have one or both of those. And then you should be so professional, like my boss is, Rob Glass, to where when our administration's around, because of the respect of him, it funnels down to us, and they don't see us as, I hate to say this word, but a bunch of meatheads. So, you know, I think that's why our staff at Oklahoma State is older and more mature, and everybody's certified out the ear, because that's the way Coach Glass is. So I think and going forward, I think it's now with the pandemic we're in, it's even going to be more of a basis, I think, on your certification and what you can bring to the table besides hooting and hollering.
Right. No, I completely agree. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
So I always like to finish this, Coach, with kind of giving you the opportunity to have the floor to speak any, like I call it, knowledge nuggets, the words of wisdom to anybody else listening and watching that you feel is pertinent for them to, if it's about you, Coach, or it's about what you do, or strength and conditioning, or life lessons, or whatever. This is kind of your time.
I said this to a guy the other day. I think, thank goodness I was taught early on really about the foundation of training with the Olympic movements. And I had a great foundation that was laid for me with my knowledge. I probably always didn't see that, but the older I get and the more I've been in this, it's amazing how much everything goes back to clean and jerk, snatch, squat. And it's always been there. It would never went away from me ever anyway. But it's just funny how when I was in high school, you know, really even in college, the girls didn't like to lift. The female student athletes, or the females that you went to high school with, ooh, I don't want to lift. I don't want to get bulky. Well, now you see the trend with CrossFit and everything you see on Instagram. Every female likes to be buffed up. Well, my wife, you know, she's a little workout maniac. That wasn't around when I was in high school. So that's why I kind of get, you know, irritated with CrossFit in a sense that your deal isn't new. I mean, we got all this from the Eastern Europeans years and years and years ago. They were doing it long before any Americans were doing it. But I think everything that's new is really old. And to me, as a coach, don't stray from what you think is your foundation and your key success, which for me is on your feet, large muscle group, multi-joint movements. When you're doing the Olympic movements, you're going to have more trunk stability and joint stability, which is going to help you in your sport no matter what it is. And then the extension of the three joints, hip, knee, and ankle that you get from the Olympic movement directly transfers to every sport, and especially the two that I work with. But the conduit, I think that you have to have from the weight room to your sport, whether it's the field, court, mat, whatever it is. That conduit is really plyometric exercises. So whether you're doing a heavy bench press, you're going to do clap push-ups or med ball chest pass, or you're doing a heavy squat, bang, we come right off the squat rack and we go into a box jump. But I think that plyometric piece is what people miss, to where you can be the biggest, strongest guy in the weight room, but if you can't apply it to your sport, then you don't do anybody any good. So that plyometric piece for me, I call it the conduit between the weight room and the sport. So I would say that that's probably why, don't get discouraged, because the whole thing about Rome wasn't built in a day. There isn't anything new and flashy. The old stuff is the old stuff because it's the best stuff, and it's the best stuff because it works.
Thanks, Coach. As best I can tell you, I know we'll all say this, but thank you for your time today. We're at an hour, and I want to respect your time, and it's a great opportunity to have you on, a legend in many ways of this field, and someone that's endured. You've been in Oklahoma State that long is almost unheard of. No one's stayed at any job. You are definitely the outlier. I'll just tell you that much. And you've done something right to do that, obviously. So thank you for that. Thank you for your insight and your wisdom, and wish you the best of luck, Coach.
Well, thank you for having me on. You guys, great questions. I had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
See you.